And I think the best place to start is with Chris. How do you propose to beat Keith Ellison?
Looking at this race, okay, and I've studied this for some time now, and I've walked around this district, and this is what I see. I see a whole bunch of people that are frustrated right now, from occupiers to Tea Partiers. What we intend to do to beat Keith Ellison is to challenge him on his own home court. I am fully comfortable making this election, and an election that centers around who has a better plan to get this country moving again, who has better chance to bring the poor out of poverty and grow the middle class. That is a central issue that I'm hearing over and over again throughout the district. And so what we intend to do is to go into the neighborhoods that Republicans traditionally don't go into. We intend to have conversations, the tough conversations, with the folks who feel like they've been left out of the pie. And from that, we will build the relationships. This is a full-time effort for me. I go out every single day, talk to more people than I know what to do with. They inspire me, they motivate me. They are ready for leadership, and they're ready for a Republican to represent this district.
And then anybody can just, this is the idea where we all start sort of jumping in. So whoever wants that.
Well, I door knock North Minneapolis more times than I would like to remember. And I've talked to lots of people over there. I serve on committees. I served on the North Side Marketing Task Force. I was involved in the Minneapolis E-Zone. I was involved in all sorts of initiatives over on the North Side. When it came time to ask people on the corners of Minneapolis Mad Dads what those people did downtown, a lot of the high school dropouts, they had no idea. Yet these kids were entrepreneurial and they were out selling illegal products. But we've had serious contacts over there. The bottom line is we actually have to have a way, not just words, to deal with poverty within our troubled parts of our district. You know, we have an awful lot of people who have been arrested and gone to prison, who've been released, who have trouble finding work. We have to work on an expungement program that if people are good for a number of years after they pay their debt to their society, they shouldn't be continued to be victimized from the bad or wrongdoing that they've already paid for. We have to actually move with the job training. We have to change the curriculum in education, and we actually have to give the Minneapolis Public School Board the power they need to actually hire the right teachers, form the right curriculum, and actually train kids for this century and not for the previous century where they might have gotten a job in a factory or on an assembly line. These assembly lines don't exist anymore. We have to prepare kids for the 21st century with jobs that are going to be technically skilled, and start thinking about those skills earlier within high school, maybe even as early as sophomore year. That kids should be able to graduate from high school, not just with a high school degree, but with the ability to be able to get a job. We're paying currently about $656 million a year for public education just in Minneapolis alone, and we're not talking about even the suburbs in our district. For that kind of money, we should be able to get a product that puts people to work, rather than you graduate and now you have to go get into some other kind of degree.
So now, beating Keith Ellison.
Well, I actually posed all these ideas to Keith back in 2006. And he actually ran on a lot of them. And since he's been elected, he's done none of them. Now, going into areas and saying, do you remember all those promises that Keith made, Congressman Ellison made in 2006? And has he kept any of those promises? Have you even seen him since you elected him? Did he lead your community? Has he done anything in this community? We had a tornado just last summer, and it left 409 properties just totaled out. And these properties were owned by landlords who were renting them out, and people couldn't get any relief because they owned the home, and those landlords were expected to take SBA loans. But those properties were insured, so those mortgages got paid off by the insurance, and those properties went boarded up and back to the city or whoever it went back to. So if you think about where is Keith when it comes to a homestead program, to say that if you lived in that home and you were renting it and the insurance paid it off, you know, we can get you the money you need to try to fix that property up if you plan to live there for the next 10 years instead of boarding it up. Why should we take this property off the tax rolls? These people were paying rent, they were
Yeah,
not.
I'm going to stop you because the subject is
I
highly
would
I would
Keith
like
Ellison.
to
Go ahead.
address that question as well.
Mhm.
I would, the question posed is how would I plan to beat Keith Ellison? And I think the number one strategy is to expose who he actually is and what he actually stands for and who he associates with. I would like to just briefly, I think some people have misconstrued my position with respect to Keith Ellison. I do think that, I strongly support freedom of religion, and I would protect the religious rights of Muslims. That's a different, but Keith Ellison is a different category. He is what's called an Islamist, but people don't really understand that term, and so I use radical Islamist, and essentially they stand for replacing the U.S. Constitution with Sharia law. He associates closely with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. CARE was a named co-conspirator to funding terrorism, which resulted in convictions of sending $12 million to the terrorist organization Hamas. Keith Ellison is the keynote speaker at CARE, probably annually, helping them raise funds, and they help him raise funds. So we have a named co-conspirator to funding terrorism associating with a sitting congressman, which is quite ridiculous. I also recently had the opportunity to ask him what he supports or what he believes should be supreme, the U.S. Constitution or Sharia law. He refused to say that the U.S. Constitution should be supreme to Sharia law. If anybody in this room was asked that question, I think that we would without hesitation say, of course, the U.S. Constitution. I have had, just one more thing briefly, lunch with, I'm in a lawyers group. We have lunch once a month. It's supposed to be a mentor group. It tends to just be lawyers getting together and having lunch, but
Kind of like this?
yes. And a friend of mine brought a 26-year-old woman who described herself as kind of ultra-liberal or whatever. And when she learned about Keith Ellison and his positions and ties, she would vote against Keith Ellison. So the strategy, the proper strategy, is actually just to expose Keith Ellison for actually what he is. That does take money and things of that nature. So if this community is serious about actually ousting Keith Ellison, then people need to get involved and help your candidates and donate and get airtime and things like that, because what it takes is just education of the public, and he can be replaced. He is the Democrats' weakest link.
Okay. Fair enough, so I'll bite. So what I heard from Michael is essentially more government programs. Now, when you start talking about kids and education and helping these folks get a job, and there are more government programs, and again, once again, that perpetuates the culture of dependency. What I'm talking about here in terms of how we beat Keith Ellison, how we message what we can do effectively to beat this guy, is essentially say, hey, we can do it. Okay, we can do it. We don't need these government programs that are totally destroying our community. Fannie Mae has done nothing more than put people into homes that they can't afford, and now look at where they are today. Okay, the federal budget on education has done nothing more than drive up the cost of college. So what we need is less government interference. Okay, and with respect to the issues with Sharia law, I think that has been tried before by yourself, Lynn, and it failed. It was a failed strategy and a failed technique. What we need to do to beat Keith Ellison is continue to build relationships in communities. And relationships doesn't mean that you promise people something that you can't deliver. It means that you show them opportunity, that you convince them that we can get this government going again, and strike up that innovative American spirit that produces jobs and produces opportunity for folks.